In a city built on quiet streets and church bells, darkness still found its way between the cracks of peace. A surgeon slain in his own basement. A friend's life ended inside a pizza shop. A student vanished into the night without a trace. And a driver stopped for a missing plate, gone in a flash of light. Decades later, justice stands cold, methodical, unblinking, yet the echoes of their final moments still breathe beneath Cincinnati's calm. And this is Inside Cincinnati's most notorious killers, shocking murders, and true crime cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Robert Van Hook. They met in a dim Cincinnati bar one winter night, but by dawn, one life ended and another faced execution. In February 1985, 25-year-old Robert Van Hook crossed paths with David Self at the Subway, a gay bar once located downtown. Self was heavily intoxicated and invited Van Hook back to his Hyde Park apartment. Within hours, the encounter turned into one of Ohio's most disturbing homicide cases. The victim was later found dead, and police quickly realized they were dealing with a calculated killing rather than a crime of passion. Inside the apartment, investigators reconstructed a scene of deliberate brutality. Evidence showed that Van Hook first strangled Self until he lost consciousness, then retrieved a kitchen knife and stabbed him repeatedly. The body had been mutilated after death, and drawers throughout the home were ransacked. Detectives concluded robbery was the motive when jewelry and small valuables were missing. Neighbors reported hearing nothing, and there were no signs of forced entry, indicating that the victim had willingly let the killer inside. Blood patterns confirmed the struggle happened near the living room couch before moving toward the kitchen, where the fatal wounds were delivered. The apartment's condition reflected both rage and opportunism. After the murder, Van Hook fled Ohio, taking a bus south. He drifted through Florida under aliases, staying in motels and occasionally sleeping on the street. For 6 weeks, his name circulated through law enforcement bulletins until the 1st of April 1985, when Fort Lauderdale police detained him after a minor disturbance. Cincinnati homicide detectives traveled to Florida for extradition. During custody, Van Hook remained silent until speaking with his mother. Shortly afterward, he confessed voluntarily, telling detectives that he targeted gay men intending to rob them. The confession matched physical evidence from Self's apartment, including fingerprints on a drinking glass and blood traces linked through laboratory testing. Once returned to Cincinnati, Van Hook was indicted on charges of aggravated murder and aggravated robbery. His defense pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and invoked the so-called gay panic defense, claiming an unwanted sexual advance triggered the violence. Prosecutors countered that explanation with proof of prior robberies of gay men dating back to his teens. The case was tried before a 3-judge panel rather than a jury, and after reviewing the autopsy, confession, and witness statements, the judges rejected the defense arguments. They found that the crime was premeditated and driven by financial gain, not panic or impulse. On the 30th of July 1985, the court convicted Van Hook and sentenced him to death. Self's relatives attended quietly. Their only public comment was gratitude that the system had worked. Van Hook spent 33 years on death row. On the 18th of July 2018, he was executed by lethal injection at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. Witnesses described him tearful and calm in his final moments. His execution marked the end of an era. Since that day, Ohio has carried out no further lethal injections, leaving his case as the state's final act of capital punishment. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Jermaine Matthews. Crowds filled the downtown streets after midnight, but what began as celebration turned into one of Cincinnati's most violent viral crimes. In the early hours of the 26th of July 2025, chaos erupted near the corner of Elm and 4th Streets, outside the popular nightclub Low V, and a nearby late-night restaurant. Surveillance footage later showed a mass brawl involving nearly 100 people, leaving 6 injured and 1 woman hospitalized with severe brain trauma. Among those identified was 39-year-old Jermaine Matthews, a local man already known to police. The attack shocked the city, not only for its scale but for the disturbing videos that spread rapidly online, drawing national attention to what news outlets called the downtown Cincinnati brawl. Investigators pieced together the sequence of events through multiple cell phone clips. The night had started peacefully as festivalgoers left Jazz Fest and nearby bars. A verbal dispute quickly escalated outside a white Jeep. Witnesses said a racial slur was shouted just as punches began to fly, though police could not determine who said it. In seconds, dozens joined the fight. Detectives later described it as an ambush, claiming that Matthews was seen coordinating with another man, Montianez Merriweather, moments before the first blows. On video, Matthews appeared punching and stomping one of the victims before dragging an unconscious person into the street. His attorney disputed that characterization, claiming Matthews was attempting to break up the melee after being slapped by another participant. Despite nearly 100 people present, only a single 911 call was placed. Cincinnati police immediately launched an investigation, reviewing countless angles of footage to identify those involved. Matthews, Merriweather, and two others, Dakira Vernon and Dominique Kittle, were the first arrests. Two additional suspects remain at large. The violent racial overtones and viral exposure prompted the FBI and the Department of Justice to open federal inquiries into potential civil rights violations. Police Chief Teresa Theage said no city security cameras had captured the fight and called the lack of real-time notification a failure of the community. Investigators noted how the brawl demonstrated the challenge of crowd-based crimes in the age of social media, where witnesses record rather than call for help. Matthews turned himself in days later and was charged with aggravated riot and assault. His bond was initially set at $100,000 but rose to $270,000 after prosecutors added 2 counts of felonious assault and 1 count of misdemeanor assault. Court records show 3 prior felony convictions for drug offenses. After posting bond, Matthews was released on electronic monitoring and house arrest while awaiting grand jury indictment. Weeks later, federal agents arrested him again on new charges of conspiring to distribute cocaine and fentanyl. He remains under federal custody as both cases proceed separately. The downtown brawl left a scar on Cincinnati's image, forcing state leaders to deploy highway patrol troopers to reinforce city policing. One viral night of violence turned celebration into chaos and left the city questioning its sense of safety. Number 3. Alex Tchervinski. They said it started as a birthday celebration downtown, but within minutes, the street turned into a violent crime scene. In the early hours of the 26th of July 2024, 45-year-old Alex Tchervinski was involved in what would later be called the downtown Cincinnati Brawl. The confrontation occurred near West 4th and Elm Streets, a nightlife district crowded with bars and restaurants. Initial reports described Tchervinski as a victim of an assault that sent 6 people to the hospital. But as video evidence emerged, his name reappeared in headlines, this time not as a victim, but as a defendant charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct. That night began with laughter and drinks among friends. Surveillance footage and eyewitness statements later showed an exchange between 2 groups outside a white Jeep, where a verbal dispute quickly escalated. According to defense filings, Tchervinski was struck twice from behind after being told he and his group didn't belong. In anger, he kicked the Jeep, believing it belonged to the man who hit him. Moments later, as the crowd grew tense, he slapped another man, an action caught on video that became the viral clip defining the case. Seconds after the slap, chaos broke loose. Several men surrounded him, knocking him to the pavement and beating him repeatedly. Witnesses counted nearly 30 blows. His wallet and watch were taken as he lay motionless on the ground. When officers arrived, they found him bleeding and dazed. Detectives gathered dozens of videos and conducted interviews over the following days. 7 suspects were arrested and charged with felonies including felonious assault and aggravated rioting. Tchervinski, meanwhile, was treated for a concussion and multiple contusions before being released from the hospital. For weeks, he was officially listed as a victim. Then, on August 19, the city charged him with misdemeanor disorderly conduct, citing the slap as unlawful conduct that contributed to the escalation. Internal police correspondence later revealed tension within the department. Detectives reportedly refused to sign the complaint, and the local police union claimed political pressure from City Hall influenced the filing. The Fraternal Order of Police publicly condemned the move as interference in law enforcement. Court filings show Tchervinski pleaded not guilty, asserting self-defense. His attorney emphasized that the slap came after he was physically attacked and that a confidential FBI informant at the scene confirmed this sequence. Prosecutors argued his actions reignited the violence. The trial, initially set for January 12, was postponed when a new witness was disclosed shortly before proceedings. If convicted, the charge carries up to 30 days in jail and a $250 fine. The brief courtroom hearings drew minimal public attendance. Supporters of Tchervinski called the prosecution unnecessary, while community activists said every participant in the brawl should face equal accountability. Today, Tchervinski continues to fight the charge, maintaining that he was punished for surviving a brutal attack. One night of street violence left 6 injured, one man charged twice, first by fists, then by the system itself. Number 4. Della Dante Sutorius. They met through a dating service, but within months, their marriage would end in gunfire and deceit that stunned suburban Cincinnati. Dr. Sutorius, a 55-year-old heart surgeon, was found dead in the basement of his Sims Township home on the 19th of February 1996. The gunshot wound to his head initially appeared to be suicide. His wife, Della Dante Sutorius, calmly told arriving deputies that her husband wasn't home. Detectives quickly realized the case was far from simple. Their investigation would expose a trail of lies, manipulation, and a motive rooted in greed and revenge. The couple had married the previous year after a brief courtship. Friends described Dr. Sutorius as successful but reserved, while Della was outgoing and extravagant. As their relationship deteriorated, the doctor began uncovering the truth. His wife had lied about nearly every aspect of her life. She had never graduated from college, owned no daycare business as claimed, and had a long pattern of pursuing wealthy men. When he learned of her past and history of violence in prior marriages, he removed her from his will and contacted an attorney to file for divorce. He planned to have her served within a week. 2 days before his death, Della purchased a .38 caliber revolver. When Dr. Sutorius failed to appear for surgery at Christ Hospital, co-workers called authorities. Deputies found him dead in the basement beside the new revolver. Investigators noted inconsistencies. The angle of the wound, lack of fingerprints, and residue patterns didn't match suicide. Forensic tests confirmed gunshot residue on Della's hands. A search of the home uncovered cocaine in her bedroom, leading to her initial arrest on drug possession. As forensic results returned, the case shifted to murder. Ballistics confirmed Della had bought the weapon used in the killing. Detectives also found notes indicating the victim's intent to end the marriage and protect his estate. Prosecutor Joe Ditters described her behavior as a calculated response to rejection. Interviews with former husbands revealed similar stories of violence and threats. One said he hid bullets to prevent her from using them, another claimed she tried to run him over during an argument. These accounts established a pattern that strengthened the murder charge. By February 27, Della was rearrested and charged with aggravated murder. The Hamilton County coroner's findings, combined with her lies and financial motive, completed the picture. Prosecutors argued she shot her husband in cold blood to collect nearly $1 million in assets. The May 1996 trial drew national media coverage and was televised on court TV. Della did not testify. Her defense argued suicide, but the forensic and financial evidence convinced jurors otherwise. After less than 5 hours, she was convicted of aggravated murder, firearm use, and drug possession. She received 23 years to life in prison. Della Sutorius died in 2010 of natural causes at age 60, never seeing parole. Her case endures as a chilling study in deceit, proof that behind charm and beauty, greed can still pull the trigger. Number 5. Murphy Tilk. They clocked in for a regular shift at a Cincinnati pizza shop, but within minutes, one would be dead and the other in handcuffs. The fatal shooting occurred inside a Papa John's restaurant at 4505 West 8th Street in West Price Hill on the night of the 9th of December 2025. Police identified the victim as 23-year-old Nawaf Al-Thawadi and the accused as his 21-year-old co-worker, Murphy Tilk. The two were described as close friends who had gone to school together and were both attending Cincinnati State. The tragedy quickly became a headline crime story across Ohio as investigators tried to understand how a friendship ended in a gunshot inside a workplace. According to dispatch logs, the first 911 call came just before 11 p.m., reporting that a man had been shot in the face. Responding officers arrived to find Al-Thawadi unresponsive in the back room, a gunshot wound through his eye. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. Detectives located 2 firearms, one belonging to Tilk and another to the victim, and 2 shell casings near the prep table. A second bullet hole was found in the ceiling, suggesting 2 rounds fired in quick succession. Employees working the front counter reported hearing 2 loud cracks separated by about 2 seconds, then silence. Investigators learned that both men legally carried handguns for protection due to late-night pizza deliveries. There were no cameras inside the kitchen area where the shooting happened, leaving only physical evidence and witness statements. Forensic teams matched shell casings to Tilk's weapon. Police detained him early the next morning around 3 a.m. Tilk allegedly told his father the shooting had been an accident, though he provided no official statement to detectives. Homicide investigators processed the restaurant for trace evidence, DNA, and fingerprints, while confirming no signs of struggle or robbery. Prosecutors quickly filed a murder charge, and Tilk appeared before Hamilton County Judge Samantha Silverstein for his first arraignment. He entered a plea of not guilty. Prosecutors requested no bond, citing the seriousness of the offense. The judge agreed, holding him without bail until a follow-up hearing on December 13. During a subsequent session before Judge Anita Birding, defense attorneys presented 24 letters of support from family members, teachers, and community figures describing Tilk as respectful and dedicated to his studies in oncology. After reviewing the case, Judge Birding called it one of the most difficult bond decisions she had handled. She ultimately set bond at $250,000 at 10%, ordering Tilk to remain under electronic monitoring if released. Court proceedings drew limited attention outside Hamilton County. Family members of both young men declined interviews, while Papa John's corporate office issued a statement expressing condolences and emphasizing its commitment to employee safety. As of the latest records, Tilk awaits trial under house arrest. No verdict or sentencing outcome has been reported, leaving the case unresolved. 2 friends entered a workplace together one night, but only one left alive, reminding viewers how one split second can alter 2 lives forever. Number 6. Raymond Ray Tensing. The flashing lights of a university patrol car illuminated the quiet Cincinnati street. What began as a minor traffic stop would soon turn deadly. On the 19th of July 2015, University of Cincinnati police officer Raymond Tensing stopped 43-year-old Samuel Dubose, an unarmed black motorist, for driving without a front license plate near the Mount Auburn neighborhood. Within moments, Dubose was fatally shot in the head while seated in his car, his seatbelt still fastened. The killing, captured on Tensing's body camera, triggered outrage, investigations, and years of courtroom battles that tested the city's faith in justice. According to the footage, the encounter began calmly. Tensing requested Dubose's driver's license, but Dubose admitted he did not have it with him. When the officer attempted to open the driver's door, Dubose pulled it shut, started the ignition, and shifted into drive. In less than 3 seconds, Tensing reached through the window, drew his service weapon, and fired a single shot directly into Dubose's head. The car rolled roughly 400 feet before crashing into a telephone pole. Dubose was pronounced dead at the scene. Tensing immediately radioed for help, claiming that he had been dragged by the car. His bodycam footage contradicted that claim. Prosecutors later confirmed the vehicle had barely moved before the gunshot. The Hamilton County coroner ruled the death a homicide. County Prosecutor Joe DeTers publicly condemned the act as senseless and asinine, stating that Dubose had posed no threat to the officer. The Cincinnati Police Department took control of the investigation. 2 other University of Cincinnati officers, Philip Kidd and David Lindenschmidt, arrived seconds after the shooting. Their bodycams recorded Tensing repeating that he had been dragged. However, both later admitted under oath they never actually saw it happen. Investigators determined dirt on Tensing's uniform came from falling backward after firing, not from being pulled by the car. The Kroll Report, an independent review commissioned by the University of Cincinnati, later described the shooting as entirely preventable, concluding Tensing had violated several police protocols and unnecessarily escalated the situation. The report also recommended sweeping reforms to campus police jurisdiction, training, and cultural sensitivity. Tensing was fired and charged with murder and voluntary manslaughter on the 29th of July 2015. He pleaded not guilty and was released on a $1 million bond. His first trial, in November 2016, ended in a hung jury. A 2017 retrial produced the same result, leading prosecutors to dismiss the case with prejudice. The officer maintained he acted in self-defense, while forensic experts testified he was never dragged and fired before the vehicle moved. The University of Cincinnati reached a $4.85 million settlement with Dubos's family, which included full tuition for his 13 children, a memorial in his name, and a public apology. Years later, a $250,000 union settlement granted to Tchervinski reignited public anger, though no new charges were ever filed. The shooting of Samuel Dubose left an enduring scar on Cincinnati, an unarmed man, a single shot, and a city still haunted by the silence between those two moments. Number 7. Deasia Watkins. A quiet morning in Cincinnati turned into one of the city's darkest crime scene, a tragedy that left investigators shaken for years. In March 2015, 20-year-old Deasia Watkins was charged in connection with the loss of her daughter, Deasia Watkins. The case quickly became one of Ohio's most disturbing domestic incidents, capturing national attention and prompting scrutiny of the child protection system. Weeks before the incident, social workers and medical professionals had expressed serious concerns about Watkins' mental stability. Diagnosed with postpartum psychosis, she had reportedly displayed erratic behavior and made alarming statements. Following an earlier domestic dispute, a juvenile court judge removed Deasia from her mother's custody and placed her under the supervision of Hamilton County Job and Family Services. The infant was moved into the home of an aunt who was explicitly instructed to prevent Watkins from visiting unless supervised by social workers. Despite this, Watkins managed to move back into the same home shortly before the tragedy. At around 6 a.m. on March 16, police officers were called to the aunt's residence in the College Hill neighborhood. Inside, they found Watkins in a bedroom showing visible signs of distress. The infant was discovered in the kitchen with severe injuries. Authorities also found a large kitchen knife nearby, and evidence suggested Watkins had used it during the act. Forensic reports later confirmed multiple wounds, and investigators found that the child's arm had been fractured. A deeply unsettling detail noted in the police report was that Watkins had placed the knife in the infant's hand afterward, an act that prosecutors would later cite as proof of awareness of wrongdoing. Investigators quickly determined that Watkins had been living in the house against court instructions. Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Detters publicly described the scene as horrific, but also acknowledged that Watkins appeared to be suffering from profound psychological instability. Forensic specialists concluded that she had likely been in a psychotic state, detached from reality, at the time of the killing. The defense cited her diagnosis and lack of intent as the foundation for an insanity plea, while prosecutors argued that her actions demonstrated partial understanding of their consequences. Watkins was arrested and charged with aggravated murder. She was evaluated by multiple psychiatrists and held in a state mental health facility for treatment and assessment. By September 2015, she was declared competent to stand trial. In February 2017, Watkins entered a guilty plea to murder, avoiding a potential death penalty. The court sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison. Public reaction was subdued but somber. Authorities described the case as one of the most emotionally devastating in Hamilton County history. Today, Deasia Watkins remains incarcerated, receiving psychiatric treatment and medication for her condition. Her eligibility for parole could come in her mid-30s, though officials emphasize continued monitoring and care. A single lapse in supervision and a mother's untreated illness collided that morning, leaving behind a haunting question about how such tragedy could have been prevented. Number 8. John Carter. A quiet Ohio evening in 2011 would begin a mystery that haunted a community for more than a decade, the disappearance of a young woman whose story refused to fade. In Fairfield, a Cincinnati suburb, 21-year-old art student Caitlin Markham vanished from her townhouse on the 13th of August 2011. Her fiancé, John Carter, reported her missing the next night after she failed to answer his calls or texts. For nearly 2 years, her name appeared on missing person alerts and search flyers until her skeletal remains were discovered in April 2013, discarded near a rural creek across the state line in Indiana. The cause of death could not be determined, but authorities classified it as homicide. According to Carter, he last saw Caitlin the night before she vanished. He told investigators they spoke briefly before he left for a friend's gathering, later claiming he returned home around 2 a.m. and fell asleep watching television. However, neighbors later reported hearing a woman shouting for help and a heavy noise inside her apartment that night. 2 witnesses also said they saw vehicles matching Carter's parked outside in the early morning hours before one car quietly drove away. When police entered Caitlin's home, they found no signs of forced entry, robbery, or struggle. Her purse and keys were missing, but her phone, ID, and car remained inside. Investigators quickly ruled out voluntary disappearance. Carter appeared emotional in televised interviews, insisting he was desperate for answers. But detectives noted inconsistencies in his statements, and over time, suspicion grew. For years, the case went cold. It wasn't until Butler County Prosecutor Mike G. Moser reopened the file that investigators uncovered new circumstantial evidence. Search warrants revealed Carter's internet activity the day after Caitlin disappeared, including searches for television show summaries he claimed to have watched, suggesting an effort to create an alibi. Even more troubling were writings discovered at his home, poems and typed pages expressing violent thoughts toward an unnamed woman, with one line reading that she must disappear. Prosecutors also cited a possible motive. Friends said Caitlin had expressed doubts about their relationship and their plans to relocate to Colorado. Investigators concluded that the evidence, while circumstantial, formed a pattern that could not be ignored. On the 13th of March 2023, John Carter was arrested and indicted on 2 counts of murder. Facing trial in 2024, Carter's legal team negotiated a plea agreement. He admitted guilt to involuntary manslaughter, a lesser offense, in exchange for dismissal of the murder charges. On the 18th of July 2024, Judge Daniel Haughey sentenced him to 3 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed. Markham's family described the outcome as devastating but accepted the plea to avoid a mistrial. John Carter remains incarcerated, with an early release motion pending. Prosecutors strongly oppose it, arguing that 3 years is insufficient for the life lost. A vanished dream, a silent confession, and a city still waiting for answers, the disappearance of Caitlin Markham remains one of Ohio's most haunting unsolved heartbreaks. From deadly obsessions to cold-blooded betrayals, these are not just cases, they are echoes of the city's darkest hours. And for every verdict written in ink, 100 questions remain unanswered. If these stories gripped you, don't just watch, join the pursuit of truth. Hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and be the first to uncover what hides behind the next headline. Because here, on Justice Reversed, every case is real, every secret matters. And the next killer's story might be closer than you think.